Was it purely a matter of religion in Belfast, or were there other things?
No, I don't think that's what that. See, what happened there was that your two communities, you had the Unionist community who wanted the north of Ireland to remain united to the United Kingdom, be part of the United Kingdom. You had the Nationalist or Republican community, the other community, and they wanted the north of Ireland to be separated from they wanted Ireland to be reunited, and the north of Ireland broken away from England. So you had the two sides. You had the Unionist community who wanted Northern Ireland to remain united. They were called Unionists. And you had the Nationalist community, who were a minority community in relation to the Unionists, although there were nearly as many, and there's many of them now. And they wanted Ireland to be united and broken away from England. So what happened was that most of the Unionists, most of the people who wanted the north of Ireland to remain united to England were Protestants, just for reasons of history. And the people who wanted to break away from England were Catholics, Roman Catholics, if you like. Just that was, they were nationalists before they were. It was as nationalists they wanted to break away from England. And it was as Unionists in the other community they wanted to stay with the United Kingdom. But because one community, the Unionist community, was Protestant and the Nationalist community was Catholic, everybody said it was a war between a religion. It was never a war about religion. It was never between. It just happened that for historical reasons, the Nationalists who wanted to break with England were all Catholics, and the Unionists who wanted to stay with England were all Protestants. And then people said it was really between nationalism and unionism. But they said it was religion, but it wasn't about religion. The main community in the north is the Unionist community. About 1.5 million of them. It's about 1 million, or nearly 1.5 million now, but in those days it was about 1 million nationalists. So the Unionist people, they were the boss. They had a majority. And that meant that they always dominated the local parliament, strongly. They controlled it because they had the majority of people. And they were good people. I know them, I worked with them for years. They were very good people, the Unionist people, but they were very frightened people. Because they were a minority in Ireland, you see, in relation to the Nationalists. And they were always afraid that the Nationalists were going to take them over. Like we would be afraid if communists came in here to take us over. They were afraid of the Nationalists taking them over. And then they have a different philosophy of life and everything. They would impose Republican ideas on them and all that, you know. So for that reason, in the north, they tried to keep the nationalist people down. They tried to keep them kind of under control by not giving them jobs, by trying to get them to emigrate. That was their great policy, get them out of the country so they could control the power. And the result was that it was almost impossible to get a job, really, if you were a Catholic. Because the government jobs, you always had to put down what school you went to, you said. Then they knew immediately whether you were Catholic or Protestant. And then the British fair play to them, then they brought in the Fair Employment Act. So that if you felt you went for a job and you were entitled, you didn't get it because you were a Catholic or a nationalist, you could take them to court and get a big sum of compensation, you know, and that kind of put a stop to it. Some people got $500,000 compensation, where they could show that they didn't get the job, even though they had the qualifications, just because they were Catholics or nationalists. So that put an end, but it was very bad for a long time, and you couldn't get a job. I remember meeting a woman one day, there was a little boy in the pram, and swinging it along. And I said, "What's the boy's name?" And she says, after Patrick Pearse was the great patriot of the 1916 Rising, his name, she says, is Patrick Pearse O'Donnell, and he'll never get a job. Or a name like that, he'll never get a job. The Unionists were very afraid of the Nationalists because And they say that they were afraid of the nationalists the way that we'd be afraid of the communists. And if we thought communists were going to take us over, we would react to that. And some people would take up guns, and that's how the IRA came about. They were reacting to what they saw as the oppression of their community by the Unionist community. But the Unionist community were acting out of fear. You have to try to understand them too. Because in the whole of Ireland they were a minority, and they were afraid that the nationalists were, which they were trying to take them over. So the Unionists, then we got a principle, which is interesting when we got it with this, that if there is a community which has an historical and political identity of its own, a community with an historical and political identity, that community has rights in virtue of that identity. And one of them is that you can't make political decisions about it without their consent. In other words, in practice it meant that when it came to the Unionist community, even though there was only a little over 1 million, and there were 4.5 million nationalists, then the simplistic democratic rule would be that the loyalists had to follow the nationalists because the nationalists were the majority. But we had a line that if you had a community that had its own identity in terms of historical and political, a political and historical identity, that community had rights. And one of them was that you couldn't make any arrangements about it in a political way unless the community consented.